City Center Radio is episode 324, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, December 20th, 2024. I am back at it. Maybe I still sound a little hoarse, but I am feeling better. That's why there wasn't an episode on Monday or Wednesday of this week. Been a little under the weather. Certainly that time of the year, I've heard from other people, whether it was them themselves or family members or friends, kind of got the ick, whatever the heck it was. Cold, flu, who knows? But, I'm feeling much better, and I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a little bit of a baby when I get sick, especially depending on what kind of sickness it is. If my stomach's hurting even a little bit, I can be kind of a baby. I don't like dealing with that and just like to rest. And, so I was still able to do work. It wasn't anything horribly bad. I was still able to, work on the website and stuff. Thankfully able to, work from home and, don't have an office I have to go into or anything like that. But I did had to, miss out on some things here and there, whether it was meetings or hanging out with friends or whatever else. And just decided, I wasn't feeling up to the podcast. I was always, a little tired leading up to it. But we are back, feeling better, and happy to have this episode with you. Planning on doing some manner of episodes next week with the Christmas holiday. You may see some disruption as well, so there might not be 3 as normal. I'll also be traveling during portions of the next couple weeks, so we'll see what happens. So, first, I hope you enjoy your Christmas holiday if you are celebrating. Enjoy your New Year's celebration. Stay safe, have fun, whether you're going to be here in Charleston or traveling somewhere else. I'm very much looking forward to seeing my family again, who I saw on Thanksgiving. But it's even though that was not that long ago, you can never see them too much. So very much looking forward to it. So planning on having more episodes, but again, just you never know what's going to happen. Just like this last week where I wasn't feeling well, travel things could, who knows, but just putting it out there just in case. And I appreciate everyone who's listened to the podcast here in 2024. I'm still enjoying doing this, and I appreciate anyone who listens. But enough of that. Let's get into the latest news. Got a lot of stories that are updates to things we've talked about before. Obviously, it's been a week since the last episode, so I'm going to go through as quickly as I can, but hopefully won't be, skimping on any important details. But if there's anything you want, if you have questions, if there's more that you want to learn about these stories, remember, just go to the show notes. I'll have links to all the stories from local media outlets and so on and so forth. So first, I got to start with the monkeys. Of course, it's been one of the most entertaining and wild stories that we've had this year, and there's been several, including several escaped animals of different kinds. But there are still 4 monkeys on the loose, and it's been weeks since 43 total primates escaped from a Beaufort County research facility. You may remember it's called the Alpha Genesis Lab. It's out in Yemassee, and it is all started back on November 7th. So we're well over a month since those 40-plus monkeys escaped. But yes, there are 4 that still haven't been recaptured. This is the first update in quite some time. You may remember me mentioning on a recent podcast that the Alpha Genesis facility really hadn't put out any updates in a while and was kind of bizarre. So they finally did put this out there. Their CEO said in the statement that the 4 monkeys, they have eyes on them. Like it seems like all the other monkeys, they're still on the property. They're just outside, so they're not like out in the community anywhere. They're just outside, in trees and stuff near the facility. And he says that they look good, seem to be doing fine, doing normal stuff that you would expect monkeys in the wild to do. He even said that he could have them, quote, darted, which, sounds like, they're going to hit him with one of those like tranquilizer darts. But said he has not given that directive because it could pose a danger to the monkeys. And since it seems they're doing well, they're just going to wait it out and hope that eventually the monkeys end up in one of the traps they have out there. Of the 39 primates that were recaptured over the last few weeks, he says they all remain in good health. So that's certainly good news. And he also put out as part of this statement, also mentioned that they're still pretty sure that how the monkeys got out was just human error rather than, someone doing this maliciously. They were mad at a coworker or mad at the facility or whatever. They're still pretty sure that it was just a human error. and that's all it was. He did mention that they are putting food out for the primates. Not all are involved with traps, so want to make sure that they're healthy and eating. So he says that's probably delaying them because, they're like, oh, if we're just going to get food right here by where we are, we don't need to go into that trap. Not that they know it's a trap, but he said, obviously they want to make sure they're okay and getting fed and hoping that eventually they'll end up in one of the traps. So that's where we're at with the monkey story. It's been wild, to say the least. Happy to hear that they're apparently doing well, whether they're still in the wild. Well, I guess you can't really call it the wild. They're still basically on the premises of this facility, but they're outside and a little bit more normal environment for a monkey. So glad, whether they're outside or inside, that they apparently are doing well. There's still some questions about that. That whole situation where PETA said that some monkeys may have died due to a heater accident, monkeys unrelated to the ones that got out, and they had submitted some information, a whistleblower complaint, to the USDA. Alpha Genesis has yet to comment on that to local media who has reached out to them, and there hasn't been any updates from PETA or the USDA about what exactly is or is not going on. So that's the latest, and of course, anytime there's updates on this crazy story, I'll be sure to pass them along. Attorneys for Jamie Lee Komoroski, that's the woman who was involved in that, really caused the crash on Folly Beach that killed a woman on her wedding night. Her attorneys have filed a motion to reconsider her sentencing. This happened last week. Komoroski, you may remember, was sentenced to 25 years in prison for felony DUI resulting in death, 15 years for 2 counts of felony DUI involving great bodily injury, and 10 years for reckless homicide. All those sentencings happened earlier this month, and it was because of that accident that happened in April of 2023. The deceased is Samantha Miller. It was her wedding night, as I mentioned. She was in like a golf cart type vehicle along with her husband and 2 others. Everyone else was also injured pretty significantly. Unfortunately, Samantha did die, and that is what ended up, resulting in part of this sentencing. So, despite the numbers I just told you about the years, remember that she's serving these concurrently. So, the highest number is what she would have to serve, which is 25 years. So, it's not all added up. So, her lawyers have said that 25-year sentence was, quote, unwarranted and grossly disproportionate, end quote. So, why are they saying that? You and I hear, hey, this girl got drunk, crashed into some people, hurt 3 of them pretty significantly, and killed 1 person. 25 years in prison seems reasonable. Well, they gave several reasons why they felt that this was, as in their words, grossly disproportionate for the crime. And of course, some of this has to do with some former cases. So that's part of it. There's been some former cases in the state that are similar, accidents that resulted in death. Those people involved in those cases got less time, and significantly less. One of the cases was 9 years. I think the other was 7 or 8 versus this 25-year sentence. So they're using that as kind of like precedent. This is what happened previously. And, I'm sure they might want to argue that the media attention behind this case was significantly more than these other incidents that have happened in previous years. And I'm sure they believe that's part of the reason it might have been this high of a sentence. But they gave some other reasons. And some of those factors include things like their client, Komoroski, lacked any other criminal history or any history of violence, that there was, an absence of intent to cause death, so obviously this is an accident, not, a planned out murder or something. Again, they pointed to history, character, rehabilitative potential, the fact that she had no prior history of DUI or DUI related offenses. And there's some other things that they included as reasons why she didn't deserve that sentence. So again, you and I might hear that and say, no, that makes sense based on the crime. But you know how, just like with politics, the court system has certain rules and standards and things like that. And sometimes comparing one case to another when they're similar enough can lead to reductions in sentences. They do look at things like that. And there's other factors, like even if it's clear that someone broke the law and the penalty for that is up to whatever, sometimes there's other factors again, just like politics, where it doesn't operate like the rest of the world, there are things that can happen to reduce sentences. So we'll see if they get any traction on this, let alone an actual reduction in her sentencing. And of course, I will update you as there are any available. State Representative R.J. May, who is a Republican from Lexington, had his home searched by federal agents back in August. You may remember that story. Been kind of waiting to see the details from that. There still isn't word on what exactly that was all about. May showed up for the first day of the legislative session, despite being, searched by federal agents. But although he is still very much a politician in the state, in our House of Representatives, he is no longer part of the state's Freedom Caucus, which, for those who don't remember, is just a super far right wing section of the Republican Party here in the state. There's also Freedom Caucuses in other states and nationally, for that matter. And when they have these caucuses, there's a certain amount of members that they accept. And they determine who is and who is not part of it. And May had previously been part of it, but according to the Freedom Caucus lead, who is Representative Jordan Pace, specifically, he's the group's chairman. That's the official title. He has said that RJ May has been suspended from the Freedom Caucus, so he's not expected to be part of that caucus. That would lead me to believe those members might think he's going to ultimately be suspended from the entire House of Representatives, but that's not a for sure thing, as we still don't know what's going to happen. So according to South Carolina House rules, an arrest and a charge does not necessarily trigger a suspension from the General Assembly. So even if whatever the search was turns out with him being arrested, indicted, what have you, does not mean he's automatically suspended. In order for that to happen, a grand jury would have to indict a lawmaker for the House Speaker to suspend that member. Then the matter would be referred to the House Ethics Committee. So there's several steps before any suspension would happen. For those who don't remember, agents from the Department of Homeland Security searched a home belonging to May on August 5th, and they seized various electronic equipment, including a laptop, an Amazon tablet, 4 cell phones, 4 hard drives, some SD cards, DVDRs, remember those? And 19 thumb drives. So a lot of things were seized. We don't know what they were looking for. There's a speculation, but I'm not going to do that here. And according to court documents that were filed in October, so a few months after the search happened, federal prosecutors indicated that May could be involved in an upcoming criminal indictment, but did not say on what charges might be included in that indictment. So usually when your house is searched, particularly by a group like the Department of Homeland Security, charges are likely coming of some variety. Whatever they recovered may determine how serious those charges are, but generally when this happens, there's going to be some kind of charge. The government tends not to do these things unless they're feeling pretty good about their chances of finding something. So we'll see. Obviously, that could be wrong. They may thought they had a good opportunity here and they didn't. So we'll see. It's unclear when specifically May was suspended from the Freedom Caucus. Like I said, he's still very much a state representative despite not being in that caucus. And as soon as there are any developments, of course, I will pass them along. It could be a huge story if he ends up being indicted for anything. But we'll certainly keep an eye on it. Unfortunately, some more bad news that involves Boeing. The company announced another round of job cuts that are happening here in South Carolina. They're continuing to lay off folks as they look to reduce costs. Amid all the myriad of issues you probably remember over the last few years about their quality, their reporting, accidents that have happened. And so it's decided they're going to cut another 67 jobs at their various South Carolina sites. The layoffs, which were announced in a December 10th filing with the SC Department of Employment and Workforce, will take effect February 21st, so at least these folks will get through the holidays. The job cuts that I just mentioned, those are in addition to the 220 previously announced layoffs that Boeing announced just last month. Those are scheduled to take effect beginning January 17th. All but one of the most recent layoffs are at the 787 Dreamliner Assembly Campus, which is in North Charleston. But there was one layoff of a support technician who was stationed at the Joint Base Charleston, where Boeing will service the Air Force's local fleet of what are called C-17 Globemaster cargo planes. As for that first batch of 220 layoffs, most were concentrated in Boeing's North Charleston operations, but there were a handful of Boeing sites in other cities that are also going to see cuts. As for those who are being laid off, any of them that are eligible, and I don't know if it's all of them, most of them, it probably depends on how they were hired, if they're full-time, et cetera. But eligible employees will receive severance pay, career transition services, and subsidized health care benefits for up to 3 months after leaving the company. That's according to Boeing. So sad news, and an additional nearly 70 people will be losing their jobs at various Boeing sites here in South Carolina. Really, just the two, the Dreamliner plant and then the one person at Joint Base Charleston. Certainly sad that that's happening. It sounds like, at least they're getting some kind of severance and assistance. That's the least a company can do in these scenarios. I know it doesn't make up for losing a job, but, at least it's something. And hopefully all those folks will bounce back and find something good and hopefully better than whatever they had with Boeing. Kind of an interesting story. You don't hear politicians apologize for much, especially when they're not forced to, and especially when it's not something particularly controversial. Say they get caught cheating on their spouse. You've seen politicians apologize for that. But Mount Pleasant Mayor Will Haney is not apologizing for anything that dramatic. But last week, he apologized for a proposed sales tax increase after the project ended up stirring up some controversy from both local officials and residents. Haney says that this proposed tax increase will be dropped completely going forward. In a statement he released last Monday, he stated that he is taking full responsibility for the shortcomings of the proposed project and that he is asking for the public's forgiveness on the controversial project. So this proposed plan was aimed to enhance Patriots Point, and they had some different ideas of what they wanted to do with that area. And in order to raise the funds for that, they were going to incorporate a 1% sales tax increase. Some officials claimed that could actually significantly boost the local economy as well, not just the sales tax increase, but whatever plans they had for the Patriots Point site. But then there were some other local officials and, of course, residents who had expressed concerns about the project and its potential impacts on the community. So not everyone was on board with how the project was taking shape. And I'm sure there was people who were opposed to any tax increase at all, even if it's just 1%. And apparently, Mayor Haney thought the pushback was significant enough that he had to apologize, that the project wasn't what he said it should have been or could have been, and that they proposed this all together. So hey, I'm not a Mount Pleasant resident, so I didn't pay a ton. My focus wasn't on this project. I knew a little bit about it, so I don't know all the details. Maybe it was just a catastrophe of a plan. I don't know. But regardless, I'm going to give a little bit of a hat tip to Mayor Haney for apologizing. Uh, Again, you never see, especially this day and age, politicians apologizing for much of anything. Some significant things that they refuse to apologize for. And sometimes when they do apologize, it's because they feel forced by media attention and things. This seems to be just, he was like, hey, I tried to do something. It didn't work out for whatever reason. I'm sorry. So hats off to him for doing that. And we'll see what this means for any potential development at Patriots Point. I know there was talk about a National Medal of Honor museum that was being worked on, and I don't know if that will really affect anything. And but as I get more details, I'll let you know. But for now, that was really just what I wanted to point out. It just was interesting to see politician apologizes. What year is this? This is quaint. And lastly, a congrats and good luck to Josh Marthers. He is a well-known local meteorologist here. Even if you don't recognize his name, I'm sure you recognize his face. He worked for News 2, WCBD. He worked in the mornings. He has announced that he is retiring. Well, I should say retiring from being a local meteorologist. He says he plans to still be in the Charleston area, but just won't be involved it sounds like he's done with local news, period, but didn't say specifically what he was going to be doing. But yeah, he announced his retirement last week. He used to deliver the forecast in the mornings, like I said, and of course you would see him on severe weather coverage like hurricanes and things. And he said that basically he had to make the biggest decision of his life, and that was to, as he put it, turn off my 2:45 a.m. alarm and put down that clicker that I've been carrying for years. So, I can't imagine doing morning news, how early you have to get up every morning. 2:45 a.m. alarm. That sounds awful. But yeah, so congrats to him. And I know Josh, and I've known him for a few years. I've seen him at several events, and he's always super nice and personable. And I always enjoyed talking to him, and he was always kind to me and Holy City Sinner. And yeah, it's always, anytime I was out at an event and he was there, it was always exciting to see him. And I always look forward to saying hi and catching up with him. Just a really kind and nice person, and was obviously very good at his job. But everyone, they deserve to step away when they're ready. So congratulations and good luck to him. I'm glad he's staying in the area, at least for the foreseeable future. And I will be able to still hopefully see him at events, even if he's not officially part of the media anymore. So I don't know if he'll be going to these things as much. But anyway, congrats to him. Really good dude. And I wish him best in the future. And for those who are wondering, he's actually been with News 2 since May of 2007. So he's been there for quite a long time. He's getting close to that 20-year mark. So that's a long career, especially doing that, in the morning, not to mention, hurricane coverage when they're on broadcast for hours and hours sometimes. So again, congratulations and good luck to Josh. And that will do it for this edition of Holy City Sinner Radio. So glad to be back. I missed being on the microphone, and hopefully I got you caught up on some of these stories. Maybe some were, I know a lot of people have been ignoring the news in general since the election. Whether you're happy with that result or not, people are kind of worn out with politics. So not that this is politics focused, but people don't want to watch the news because there's always politics. So I appreciate you hanging in there and listening to this show, which does sometimes, of course, talk about politics. Hopefully, this wasn't too bad. It wasn't very politics heavy, but just catching you up on some of the latest stories. And there's actually more. I have several other stories I want to talk about, but just don't have the time today. Hopefully, everything will go as planned, and we'll be able to get all those stories out for you next week, starting on Monday. But again, being the holiday week, there may be some variation. So the best way to make sure you don't miss any episodes is to subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. That way, when there's a new show, it just automatically downloads for you and it'll be there waiting for you when you log into whatever app it is that you're using. If you also have a moment to rate, review on whatever platform you're listening on, that's a big help to me as well. And I greatly appreciate anyone who has done it or will do it. And if you want to go that extra mile, go to patreon.com/Holy City Sinner. A couple people did that just for the holidays, just as a thank you. And I appreciate that. Any money from Patreon goes back to website fees, podcast fees, just helps bring down the cost of running this entire operation. And I greatly appreciate those who have done that in the past or may do it in the future. And if you can't do any of that, that's A-okay. Just thank you for listening. Think about sharing this with other folks who may be interested. That's a big help as well. I'm looking forward to continuing this into 2025 and just bringing on more listeners and, hopefully having a lot of good things to talk about in the new year, if the news cooperates. But just appreciate everybody. Have a great holiday. Have a great new year. If I don't, if there's some shakeup with the podcast, I want to make sure that I get that to you before the holiday rush. But hopefully I'll be, as normal in your podcast feed next week, 3 days a week, but we'll see what happens. I also need to thank Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Soundsystem for producing this and every episode of Holy City Sinner Radio, and Tyler Boone, whose music you have heard in each and every episode this year. And with that, have an amazing weekend. If you need plans, go to holycitycenter.com/calendar if you're looking for things to do. You can also find out what's happening over the holidays, who's open, who's not, who's hosting the big New Year's plans this year, or who's open for New Year's Eve if you're just looking to go out for dinner. Maybe you want to go to New Year's brunch on New Year's Day. All that stuff can be found on holycitycenter.com. So head over there now and start planning out everything before it's too late. Can't wait to talk to you all again. Have a great weekend. Until I am back in your podcast feed, good night and good luck.